Ahoy toy! Welcome to the 200th episode of Transfixed. Wow, it sure sneaks up on you. And there's a good reason for that. Funny story, I actually goofed in my episode numbering. I like to number my episodes just to keep track of them and to know how many I've done. If I do kind of, things that are outside of my usual format of reviews and fixes, then I don't number those. But generally I number them all, and the way I found out that I made this mistake was my friend gave me this giant novelty check for my birthday. The idea is that it was from Cobra Commander for 2 of the G.I. Joe episodes I'd done, but when I went to look them up, one of them was not a G.I. Joe episode, and then I realized, oh, there are 2 with the same number. One of them is a G.I. Joe episode. So what I had done is when I went to post episode 159, I named it 149 and then continued on with the wrong numbering scheme. So that was my goof. Once I fixed it, I realized, oh my gosh, my next episode is 200. So I should do something special. I don't really have a big milestone though, out of the stuff that I had kind of in progress. So I think the best one would be to do the MASTERFORCE one, because I finally finished watching MASTERFORCE, and it was a good show. And I did promise that I would do that after doing the Headmasters cartoon, which is the first of the 3 Japanese exclusive cartoon series that took place after the the main G1 cartoon and the movie. I'm not sure if I'm going to continue on with the third one to do Victory, because I'm not really a binge watcher, so it takes me a long time to get through these episodes 1 or 2 at a time. And it's also, I can't really enjoy it because I'm taking notes, and I don't know. It's going to take a long time if I ever do get around to doing it at all. So for now, let's celebrate 200 with the Transformers MASTERFORCE cartoon series review, all 42 episodes. In my opinion, it's a lot better than Headmasters. I thought Headmasters was kind of flat, didn't really seem to go anywhere, didn't have any likable characters, unlike this show. And surprisingly, the human characters are interesting. A lot of times, we don't really care about the human characters in Transformers. We just want to focus on the robots. Humans kind of are annoying, get in the way. But this one has an interesting relationship because of the way they're these God Masters, or in North America, we call them Power Masters. The way they operate with the trans-tector body of the Transformer is interesting, and the actual living Transformers. Yeah, actually, it's quite compelling. They managed to get some good stories out of it. So I'm going to go through most of the characters first, and then I'll talk about some of the notable episodes. And I will warn you about spoilers before I mention any spoilers. I'm not going to say a spoiler and then say spoiler alert, because I don't like it when people do that. So this show kind of moves around through different toy lines. The characters this deals with are the Pretenders and the Power Masters mostly, or God Masters rather, and the Headmaster Juniors, which are the smaller Headmaster toys that came out. And the reason I'm watching this show is because I think it's really cool to see animated versions of the toys, right? Like, I always thought the compelling thing about these cartoons was to see your toys brought to life on the screen, and and I just thought that we didn't have that for a lot of these later Transformers toys, not knowing about the Japanese stuff. So the novelty for me is to see how they animate these characters. Now, having said that, a lot of them are changed. So they all have different names, and a lot of them were also changed from they had different versions of the toys in Japan. So to start off with, the show starts with the main characters being the Pretenders, but that quickly kind of shifts focus over to the God Masters and the Headmaster Juniors. So to start off with, as you may know, the Autobots were called Cybertrons in the Japanese cartoons and other media, and the Decepticons are Destrons. Now the Pretenders were still called Pretenders. The main one is Metal Hawk, who they call Hawk when he's not a Pretender guy. And it's interesting because they actually make a bit more sense in a lot of these things. They make more sense because the Pretenders shrink down to human size instead of having these giant humans in weird armor like they had in the North American comics and whatnot. So Hawk is like a regular guy in a suit, and then he turns into Metal Hawk, and then he can also, turn into his robot form from there. So he's called Metal Hawk because the toy is made of a lot of metal, a lot of gold metal, I think. And I don't think we got that toy outside of Japan. And then the 3 Cybertron, I'm gonna trip over these words, the 3 Cybertron Pretenders were Phoenix, who we know as Cloudburst, the flying one, Diver, which we know as Wave Rider, and Lander, which we know as Landmine. Lander's interesting. Well, we don't really see a lot of these characters, but Lander's like, when they first call him, he's on a date, he's always drinking wine, he's like this, I don't know, suave guy.
Diver is cool. He's kind of a more down to earth guy. You know, works. I think he's like a marine biologist or something. Phoenix, I guess, is a pilot. He's pretty cool too. But again, we don't see a lot of them. And then on the Destron side, for the Pretenders, we've got Bombburst is known as Blood. Okay. Skullgrin is Dauros, and Submarauder is Gilmer. I actually like both of those names. So yeah, the first episode starts with these Decepticon or Destron Pretenders attacking a cruise ship. So they send the Autobots or Cybertrons and whatnot. You know, after a few episodes of this, we kind of focus more on the Headmaster Juniors. So, like I said, there's Shuta. I think I mentioned Shuta. Shuta Go, whose codename will be Go Shooter. I guess it's a play on words if you're the way they do Japanese names. And so this little boy, the way they control the Transtectors is they get these master braces. So there's these bracelets they put on, and then they can somehow, you know, the suit forms around them, right? And then they can become the head of the Transtector. So Go Shooter or Shuta becomes a police car. Now in the West, instead of a police car, he was like a fire chief car. Same toy, but redecoed. Instead of white and black, he's gray with red windows, and he's a fire car, right? So he's kind of the main character, little boy guy that we want to follow along. And he's not annoying. Like you know, he can be precocious and he acts like a child, but he also, you know, grows and he's tolerable, which is nice. And then so they have to recruit some more. So they get Cab, we know as Hosehead. So Cab's actually a prince of this little island nation. And this is another thing. All the characters in the show are very like international. They're all from different places around the world. So Cab is from this little, well, fictitious island actually. So yeah, he becomes Hosehead or Cab, and then we get Minerva. Minerva is like this French exchange student, and she turns into a medical, like an ambulance car. It's a Porsche, but it's done like an ambulance, so I don't know. But like paramedic, I suppose. And we didn't have her. I guess, you know, this is back in the 80s when Hasbro wasn't really confident in female characters and toys selling, so they recolored her entirely, and that's how we got Nightbeat. So Nightbeat is our version of Minerva. Cab and Hosehead not really changed. I guess just, you know, the name was changed, but the toy I think is the same. Yeah, so on the Destron side, now this is interesting. The big bad in this series is called Devil Zed, and we don't really know, or Devil Z if you prefer. We don't really know much about Devil Zed. It seems to be that this takes place years after the G1 continuity. This is still on Earth, and the Decepticons are gone or gone underground. We don't really know. They don't really explain a lot. But Devil Zed is like this weird like energy ball that lives in this clamshell in a cave under the sea. Okay, I don't know. So they're under the sea, which one thing, you know, I kind of forgot that the G1 Decepticons were underwater, but yeah, they're under the water as well. So they've got this Devil Zed, and it's in charge. It just gives you orders, and it's sort of commanders. It has Overlord, which we don't see until later in the show, but the toy we got as Overlord has two Godmasters in it, or Power Masters, and these two are like a father and mother type of figure in the show. So they are occupied by Giga, which is this man who's got a really badass widow's peak, and then and Mega, which I guess is his wife, I don't know, who likes to dress like a witch, and he's got this pointy hat and green hair. So they, you know, they are the commander. They do what Devil Zed tells them to do, and they recruit the Destrons, or some humans to work for them. I mean, I guess these two humans have kind of sold out to Devil Zed, right? Now, some of this dynamic changes. I don't want to get into spoilers yet, but this is where the interesting human relationship comes in, because they're working for the Destrons, who don't really care about humanity. Yeah, so they have their own, the Pretenders kind of aren't really cutting the mustard, so they have to get their own Headmaster Juniors. So they recruit like these street kids, right? Like these youths who are in a, I don't know if they're in a gang, but they don't seem to have parents. So they get these three kids: Wilder, who we know as Fangry. They get Bullhorn, who we know as Horrible. And instead of Squeeze Play, they get Cancer. Okay, now you've probably seen the zodiac signs. Of course, this is Cancer, as in the crab, right? Because Squeeze Play looks like kind of an alien crab. I always thought he looked more like an alien xenomorph, but I guess he's based on a crab. So those are the three boys and that they have working for the Destrons. So yeah, we have episodes that focus on them, and then later on we've got to get the Power Masters in here, or the God Masters to call them. So of course this is the arms race, right? Where now both factions want to go and recruit the rest of these missing master braces and transtectors. And again, this isn't really explained. They just kind of lying around, right? So of course the first one we get is well, what we think of as Power Master Optimus Prime. They've just got this truck that happens to look like Optimus Prime that some guy found. This guy's name is Jinrai. I always thought it was Ginrai, like Ginsu, but because it's with a G, but it's Jinrai. You can hear them saying it in the show. So Jinrai is this 19-year-old truck driver who, I don't know, finds the truck, I guess, and that's his job. He's just driving truck. He's not interested in any of this stuff at the beginning, but they recruit him, you know, because I don't know, he finds the master braces in the glove box and he can turn into into Jinrai or...
よーダイバー、面白いものつけてるじゃないか。いやー、俺のイルカはお利口さんだな。後でご馳走たっぷりやんなくっちゃ。おいダイバー、確かにイルカは役に立ったよ。だけど助けるのは俺だぜ。そこんとこ忘れないでくれよな。
Now, there's no trailer at the beginning. Later on, in one of the later episodes, they will build a trailer for him so he can become Super Jinrai. But anyway, that's later on. So here's the first one, and then they've got to recruit the rest, right? So they have to find the rest of the master braces, and they just go looking around, scanning for them and whatnot. So they find three more. So they find Lightfoot, who we know as Getaway.
Jinrai-san, hi! いいぞ、ライトフット!
Road King, who's this F1 race driver we know as Slapdash, and Ranger, who we know as Joyride, and they find in Canada. And I was thrilled because, hey, we finally have a Canadian character. How often do you see that? Awesome. On that note, when they do build the trailer for Jinrai, it's built in Canada. They made it in Canada. So you could say that he's partly Canadian. Anyway, we also see an appearance from Grand Maximus. So it's not really clear where he comes from, because they had Fortress Maximus in the Headmaster series. They mentioned that the Headmasters are out there in space fighting the Decepticons, or Destrons rather. And I don't know if Grand Maximus is like the brother of Fortress Maximus or the leftovers or what. Same with Zarak, right? Because they have Black Zarak on the Destron side, who seems to be the remains of Scorponok, but we're not quite sure. I don't think they ever really quite explained that. Anyway, so meanwhile, the Destrons are finding their guys. So they get Hydra and Buster, who we know as Darkwing and Dreadwind, who combine into Dreadwing. Although in this series, Hydra and Buster combine into Darkwings. I thought that was confusing enough in English. Now we've got this other version, which is just as confusing. And then later on, they run into some other characters. They have Double Dealer, who is known as Clouder, who is this kid that they recruit. So he's like the double agent, right? So you know, Double Dealer could be an Autobot or Decepticon. So when they get Clouder or Double Clouder, he starts off as a Destron. They get him to kind of make friends with the Cybertrons and infiltrate and betray them. But then he has to decide for himself, which side does he want to be on. So that's kind of interesting. They also a couple times run into Six Knight, who is a Japanese exclusive. So you know how we had Six Shot, right? So in the Headmasters we had Six Shot, and then he's from like this ninja clan, Six Ninja or something like that. So Six Knight is the Japanese recolor of Quick Switch, which was an Autobot toy with 6 modes, who I don't think appeared in any media. So yeah, so he shows up, but he's actually kind of helping out the Autobots, the Cybertrons, I think. And one other little character that shows up is Browning.
Now, he only just appears all of a sudden in one episode, and then we see him again much later. And he's like, he seems to be like a little pet of Cancer, because he sits on his shoulder. Now, if you don't know Browning, he is part of the micro-change line from Takara, pre-Transformers. And I had him as a kid. I think I had the bootleg, which was Kingdam, Gun Robo, something like that. But yeah, he came in different colors. He was a little transforming pistol in the same line, the Gun Robo line that Megatron came from. There's 2 other guns, and Browning was one of them. So when I was a kid, I couldn't get a Megatron. I couldn't find one. So I had this little guy, and he was like my stand-in for Megatron. And he's actually a pretty cool little pistol. The transformation is actually superior. I don't know why we didn't get this imported into Transformers, but yeah, he's pretty cool. He shot these little pellets. He actually fired projectiles, which is cool too. Unfortunately, I don't have it anymore. I lost it. But anyway, it was really cool to see him just appear in the show. And of course, he's called Browning because, well, Browning is a gun manufacturer. So he's modeled after Browning. I don't know which pistol it is. But yeah, so that was cool. He's this cute little pet robot. Let's see, who else do we have? Yeah, so we also see the Seacons feature quite a bit in this show. And I always thought the Seacons were kind of lame, right? When I was a kid, I thought they didn't make sense. Why would you have a bunch of robots in the water? Because usually electronics and water don't mix. And again, like I said, I forgot that the Decepticons' base was underwater. And so it makes more sense that you have sea-based attacks in this show from the Seacons. They're handled differently though. So the combiners, like the Seacons, there's like 6 of them, right? Because one of them turns into a target master, a weapon. Now they're not individual as far as I can tell. It seems to be the main unit, who is Snaptrap, or they call a Turtler, is an individual Destron robot. And then I think it seems like all the limbs are just sort of army drones, and because there's lots of them, right? There's lots of Tentakills. There's lots of, but they have Gulf, right? Instead of Scalor and Lobclaw. Anyways, there's lots of these guys. They get blown up all the time. In fact, every time Piranacon shows up, sorry, he's not Piranacon when he's combined in this show. He is King Poseidon. He gets separated all the time. He gets shot, all his limbs fall off, and then later on he'll just combine with new limbs. But yeah, it kind of makes sense that they use him that way. So he's in the whole series. So yeah, I like him better now than I used to. Lastly, much later in the show, when there's big battles, we see when Black Zarak comes onto the scene, and he's got all these guard minders. So this is the fast track that comes with Scorponok. There's a whole bunch of them. There's like an army. So that's based on fast track, and they just call them guard minders. Now there's one who seems to be the commander or something, who's colored in gold instead of gray. And we actually got a Generation Selects figure him recently, and they call him Black Rorichi. That name does not appear in the show. In the show, they only call them all guard minders. Even the gold one is called just a guard minder. So I don't think they're named anything else as far as I know. Maybe they made up the name Black Rorichi. I don't know why. And he's not black, he's gold. So go figure. Yeah, so they're in there as kind of cannon fodder for a while. Now I think that covers all the characters. So what's the show about? Well, like I said, it's mostly hunting down these master braces to get the God Masters together to try to defeat Devil Z or Devil Z and the Destrons, of course. Now the way they do that is they rely a lot on this sort of magic energy called choke-on power. And there's 3 different kinds. They explain this in one of the episodes. I think it's episode 6 or something like that. So there's Chinchokon, Devil Z explains, is the earth power. There's Jinchokon, which is human power, like the human soul power. And then Tenchokon, which is the power of the heavens or the universe, right? So all of those together are Chokon powers. And you'll see this a lot of the times where Jinrai is battling one of the Destrons. And he just, he'll shoot his missile and fire his guns, but then he'll go, Chokon power, and then shoot a big bolt of energy. So this is often the way they save the day, right? So they have the Chokon power. Since we're talking about Jinrai, he's an interesting character. Like I said, he starts off as just this easygoing truck driver, but he does grow into the leadership role, and he's actually pretty cool and pretty funny. Luckily, the subtitles are pretty good in this show. I don't know if there is one of those horrible dubs. I didn't find it. The version I have did have
it has the first 3 episodes, and then one of the later episodes has commentary from Chris McFeely. So that's definitely worth listening to, as always, because he knows everything about these series. But I don't know if there was a horrible dub. There probably was, but I just watched it with subtitles, and the subtitles were good. So if you're going to watch this show, of course you want to watch the first 3 to 5 episodes to see what's going on here. I didn't really make notes on anything else up until episode 22, which is when Grand Maximus shows up and he gives the design for the trailer, the extension trailer for Jinrai. This is the God Bomber armor, right? That that thing with a chrome chest piece on, and so this is supposed to help the battle quite a bit. The next episode is 23, where they talk about headmasters in space. Episode 24 is the first time Overlord actually goes into battle. So you see Mega and Giga form into Overlord and go and battle the Cybertrons. Episode 25 through 27 is interesting because that's where Jinrai battles Overlord and Black Zarek on the moon. Yeah, so that's pretty epic. Busts out his choke-on power. Black Zarek transforms. Black Zarek transforms. He says, "Big transform." I don't know why, but he has to say that. They always have to announce when they're transforming. They always have to say, "God on, transform, big transform." They always announce it. Episode 28 is when the first time we see the God Bomber robot mode, which is interesting because he's got that extra trailer, right? And it forms his armor and missile and whatnot. So Jinrai can fly in his robot form because the God Bomber armor has a jetpack. So when he needs to move around, he'll actually transform into robot mode, put on the God Bomber jetpack, and then pick up and carry the main trailer around with him, which I think is quite amusing. But at least there's continuity. It doesn't just disappear like G1 Prime's trailer. So that's kind of funny. And then we'll skip up to episode 31, which is actually the introduction of Clowder. And actually, I'd forgotten, he actually works for the U.S. Department of Defense. So yeah, Clowder is a DoD employee by all accounts. And so he's recruited to the Destrons. We'll skip up to episode 35, where we see this is where we see the Guard Minders. And this is when they decide, so I'm going to get into spoiler territory here, okay? This is when they decide, forget about subjugating humanity, we're going to kill all the humans. Kill all of humanity. And that is what kind of gives the human Destrons doubt, right? They're like, wait a minute. We're humans. They want to kill all humanity. They said they're going to spare Mega and Giga. But they have their doubts. Now they're all having doubts, which is interesting. It's really cool. Episode 36, we see the Firecons. Now, I didn't mention them before because they just kind of show up. It was cool to see them on screen, but you see the Firecons and they get wiped out within 30 seconds. They're all destroyed. And then in the next, I think 2 episodes later, I find out that those are just legions as well. Like there's just tons of Firecons that they use, like the Seacons, where they're just cannon fodder. So they get blown away left and right. And I guess that was the last notable episode I saw. It does stay interesting throughout, but after 36, I guess you could, the last episode was 42 anyway, so I would say watch it from there on. I think the whole series is worth watching. You could probably, I would say maybe watch, episodes 1 through 10, skip to 22, and then watch right through to the end. It's a good show. It's got good stories. It's got good characters. It took me a while to realize that there were so many human characters that were doing so much. Because there's no Megatron or Galvatron. Devil Z is just this, like I said, this clam energy ball thing, who's manipulating all the humans to doing his bidding. And the good guys, the Autobot Cybertrons, are mostly human, operating these Transtectors. The Pretenders have faded into the background by this time, although you still see them there. And it's really about the human characters. And it's the only show I can think of that focuses so much on humans and humanity, but it's still a good Transformers show with Transformers action and battles and Transformers in it. I think it's really well done. So yeah, I would skip Headmasters and I would watch this. I can't speak on Victory because I haven't seen it. So I guess that brings me to the end of this. It's just, like I said, a high-level review of the series as a whole. So yeah, give it a shout if you can get it. I think you can buy the Shout Factory DVDs, or you can just download it like I did. So that's MasterForce in a nutshell. Thanks for listening to this and watching. Good night.